Hello, everyone. If you could maybe take your seats. I know there's still some people coming in, but we'll wait a couple more minutes for the rest of the people who will arrive. Thank you all for coming. Lots of old familiar faces. And it's good to see you all here. That's true, Doug. Yeah. Won't argue about that. I don't know if there's anyone else coming. I can't tell. But anyway, we'll give a minute or two. You never know what's going to happen when you invite people to something like this. But oh, yes. Well, I'm getting there, Krista. You don't have to worry about that. If anybody else shows up halfway through, well, that's okay. It's not a problem. We're good? Oh, a couple of minutes in. All right. Anyway, I'd like to welcome everyone to Kelly's Celebration of Life. Just going to put these down because they're bugging me. Thanks for coming here to celebrate Kelly and her life well lived. Thanks for all of you who traveled long distances to get here today, and that speaks volumes about how Kelly touched your lives. Before I forget, because my daughter reminded me, if you could put your phones on silent mode so that we don't have any interruptions, that would be appreciated if you haven't done that already. It seems like an impossible task to describe who Kelly was and what she meant to all of us, but I know whatever happens today will result in laughter, sadness, joy, and a love for Kelly. Before we begin, I'd just like to thank Pastor Mitchell and United Pentecostal Church for allowing us to use this space and equipment, their space and equipment. This was the former home of the Lord of the World Catholic Church. So for some of you, it's a homecoming. For others, it's probably your first time in this building. Now, while this isn't a religious event, this is a sacred space, so please treat it as such. I'd also like to thank all the friends and family who helped make this happen, especially the gang. Thanks, Josh. I couldn't have done this without you, and I love you all. So now we'll get started with one of Kelly's favorite songs, Seeds by Kathy Mattea. Thanks, Josh. I should be good now. This song.
Sometimes I stop on my way home and watch the children play. I wonder if they wonder what they'll be someday. Some will dream
Thanks, guys. Okay. Well, I guess there'll be lots of stuff going on in the background, but that's okay. So, a day like today is an unexpected gift that must be savagely unwrapped at first sight. This is the first line of a poem that Kelly wrote called The Day After Fools, about the day after April Fools. Man, she could write a great opening line to a poem. You can't help but want to read more. Hopefully today will be one of those days. So, how do you describe the woman you've loved for 40 years of your life, the mother of your children, your best friend and confidant, your favorite redhead? That word came to mind when my grief counselor asked me, how do you describe your wife in one word? I said, extraordinary. She personified 3 words that were printed on the inside of a purse she had given to her friend Loretta: live, laugh, love. She had a full life filled with laughter and love, and she encouraged others to follow her lead. Everyone knows our Valentine's Day story, 1981, a bean dinner dance in Ottawa, dancing and singing all night, how she picked the only song I knew off by heart, Grandma's Feather Bed, when I said I would play my guitar for her. She told me after I proposed in July of that year that she knew that very night that she was going to marry me. Serendipity, indeed. The rest is a love story for the ages. Kelly loved her children, Josh and Krista, and were always proud of all their accomplishments and how successful they had been in their chosen professions. She was so proud of how they faced all their challenges and made the decisions they needed to get to where they are today. She loved watching them grow up and grow into the amazing adults they are today. She also loved their partners, Tamara and Travis. And without a doubt, she's the best nanners. That was her name for grandmother. To her twin grandsons, Oscar and Sully. She loved them to bits. When the pandemic hit, we couldn't go someplace warm, so we went to Vancouver for 7 months. It allowed Kelly to spend precious quality time with Oscar and Sully, and we could still walk and talk every day, and boy, did we talk. Her long-term memory was unbelievable. She even remembered her phone number when she was 4 years old. Her short-term memory wasn't so good. She loved her parents, Dan and Lynn, her brother Dan, sister Colleen, and the Burns family, and the Marcon family. Her brother Dan and sister-in-law Zita were always there to help whenever we needed it. We talked a lot about all of her memories. It wasn't until June of 2019 that Kelly was diagnosed with a neurodegenerative disease called corticobasal syndrome. It had been affecting her life for at least 6 years by then, but no one could figure out what it was. It affected her cognitive and motor function, and she had many bizarre symptoms. I can't imagine what it would feel like being upside down all the time, or with any noise, no matter how quiet sounding. It was like a cannon going off in her head. She lost her sense of taste until one day Peter brought some lemon cream cookies, and that flavor exploded in her mouth. She wouldn't let anyone near them from that day forward. You'll get a chance to taste them today. After her death, they found Alzheimer's, Lewy body, and amyloid plaque changes in her brain. The day she got the diagnosis, she said, "I'm saying yes to all of life's possibilities." Not that she already hadn't. "I'm going to go out with my boots on, and I'm going to decide my own fate." And she did exactly that. She always said she'd never trade her life for another. She had a great life. She was blessed with a beautiful, loving family and friends who she could always count on. Before CBS, she had an exceptional brain with a great intuition, probably because she went to 10 or 12 different schools in her lifetime and learned how to read people early on so she could fit in. She was smart, funny. She loved to laugh. She was a great game player. She loved to walk and talk. She especially loved time spent with her family and friends. For her, life was about the experience and how she felt, not about stuff. She loved to meet new people and invite them into her circle. including in Merida, Mexico. The Amigos and Gwen and Zalani were part of that circle. She had a big circle. She was an exceptional med lab technologist in hematology and transfusion medicine, a charge technologist, a clinical coordinator, teacher, and mentor to many med lab students, regional lab program facilitator, member of the chair of the CMLTO discipline committee, original member of Habitat for Humanity in Sudbury. She was a recipient of a Sisters of St. Joseph's and a Lions Club International Award, all while raising two very successful children. She always wanted the best for them. She was most proud of her work in El Salvador and for being the originator and fundraiser for Amigos para Siempre, medical clinic in El Salvador. She loved to travel in Canada, the US, Europe, Central America, the Caribbean, China, Merida, Mexico. And although she loved winter when she was younger, she preferred someplace warm as her neurodegenerative disease progressed. She touched the lives of many, especially Henry and his family in El Salvador. She knew in her heart that supporting him was the right thing to do. Kelly wrote in her journal that her dad was her greatest influence in her life. He taught her how to love animals and nature, to laugh, how important the sense of humor was, the importance of family and friends, helping people in need, how to hug and be playful. She was devastated when he died less than a year after his retirement. Later on, I wrote the song Papa's Moon because there was a full moon, spectacular full moon the day he died. She loved that song. There was a full moon on the night that Kelly died. We call that one Nanner's Moon. I haven't written that song yet. But someday. Kelly wrote these life lessons in a journal in 1998. Don't burn bridges ever. Laugh as often as possible. Never take anyone for granted, in capital letters no less. Speak your truth softly, but speak it. Don't take life too seriously. Associate with positive people. Find the humor in everything. Kindness always pays off. You don't always have to be right. Learn something new every day. Tackle your fears. She put down flying. Sometimes she was afraid to fly. People are more important than things. The grass is not greener on the other side. You can learn from someone else's mistakes. Spending time outdoors is good for the soul. Walking at night with a friend is better than therapy. My family comes first. She loved big icing, butterscotch sundaes with double pecans, pecan pie, candies, especially sweet tarts and wine gums, onion rings, and anything salty. The saltier, the better. Lucy McLean was her first friend in Sturgeon Falls, where they worked as lab techs. They had so much fun together. The gang, the couples we met at Lord of the World in 1990 became our best, most cherished friends. She said to me one day, "I'm going to this new church and bring the kids with me. You're welcome to join me." I'm glad I did. Carmen, also a redhead and part of the gang, was her best friend. More like a sister from another mister. They would always walk and talk on a regular basis, even when the pandemic hit. She was another lifeline for Kelly as she struggled with her illness. Thank you. She had a lot of walking partners, including Dora, Loretta, Jill, Shelley, Lorraine, Deb, Janet, and the hospital walking group that Elsie led. She also loved her Monday, Tuesday book club friends. You know who you are. I don't think they ever read a book, but they always had a wonderful time when they got together, sharing a glass of wine or two, laughing and telling their stories. She enjoyed going on couples and girls' canoe trips in the annual trek to Camp Manitou and her group of friends there. She enjoyed writing poetry, short stories, and silly songs for birthdays and retirement. I really didn't know how good a writer she was until she won the local poetry sweatshop competition and competed at the nationals in TO. That's Toronto for those who don't know what TO is, where she ended up in the top 10. Oh, and she also wrote a book called A Crack in the Road. Her friend Dora got it published for her before she died. She was so happy to see that happen. It's a great book, in my honest opinion. She painted with watercolors and loved to take pictures with her Nikon camera. She loved sports like ringette and softball and squash and tennis, downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, and she was good at most of them. On the more daring side, she jumped out of an airplane. She was a scuba diver diving in the St. Lawrence, Morrison's Quarry, and under the ice. She had a real zest for life. She loved all her pets, especially her hamster Cinnamon and our dog Bear. She loved to catch frogs from the time she was 4 years old, and she loved butterflies. I could go on and on. One last thing before we move on. Today you were all given a green ribbon to wear with the web address Be a Donor in support of the Trillium Gift of Life Network, an organ donation program. Kelly had a few experiences with friends who were either an organ donor or recipient. Her great good friend Gloria Wolfhard received a heart double lung transplant and lived 9 or 10 years longer because of it. One of her good friends from high school donated a kidney to his son, and his daughter is also a prospective donor for her brother. Kelly also helped organize bone marrow drives in Sudbury for individuals with 3 unique blood types. In the end, though her brain was dying, her body was healthy, and she decided to be an organ donor upon her death. Because of her, 4 people were recipients of life-saving organs. Kelly's legacy of giving lives on in them. Please consider being an organ donor by going to beadonor.ca to sign up. One day you could give the gift of life. Kelly, I love you, and I miss you every day. Now a couple of comments from friends who couldn't be here. From her friend Beth Cormier-Lacasse, Kelly's best friends from grade 7 on. Kelly and I were best friends in high school in Ottawa. I have such fond memories of our high school years together. Kelly was such a bubbly, perky personality, and when I saw her in the hallway, there was always that beautiful big smile to greet me, along with that tilting back and forth of her head. She had such an engaging personality that it made it so easy to connect with and love her. She was a good friend to everyone. She was the opposite to superficial, which was unusual in high school. I was always in awe of her. She was so confident, smart, and upbeat, and I don't have any memory of her ever being down. We stood beside each other when we married our husbands and shared stories of our children as they grew. She was so proud of Krista and Josh. Kelly touched so many people's lives and enjoyed many friends. I consider myself privileged to have been one of them for so long. Lynn Monk was Kelly's first and oldest Sudbury friend, and she sent this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson to describe Kelly. Successful is the person who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of children, who leaves the world better than they found it, who has never lacked appreciation for the earth's beauty, who never fails to look for the best in others or give the best of themselves. Her friend Janine Towns, who she went to El Salvador with in 2001, they called each other their low-maintenance friends, so she was Kelly's low-maintenance friend. My dear friend Kelly, oh my, when I think about Kelly, I think about our shared joke about being each other's low-maintenance friend. We never cared or worried about birthdays, anniversaries, or even regular contact. Each visit was its own easy, simple entity. We just picked up where we left off. I met Kelly through her cousin Karen when we all went to El Salvador in 2001 on a mission trip with a church from Listowel and Karen's brother Blair. Kelly and I continued our friendship we forged during our El Salvador trip once we were home in Canada, as we both lived in the Sudbury area at that time. We simply met for coffee, or more often, a walk along Lake Ramsey shore path. Kelly was loyal in keeping our connection and making sure that we met for our problem-solving walks. Oh, the problems we solved. Kelly was always an unselfish listener and confidant. Her heart was always open and compassionate. She was wise, funny, kind, creative, so smart. We walked and talked lots about life, religion, our kids and husbands. We updated each other and then moved on. Even after moving to Manitoulin, I could count on random calls from my sprightly, plucky friend Kelly. She was so good to keep track of me, and we always had wonderful conversations. I admire how Kelly walked through life, how she established firm boundaries, and of course, how she faced her untimely end of life. She taught me to love well, not to sweat the small stuff, and to have fun. When all else fails, write a song. To you, Al, Josh, and Krista and families, you have my deep condolences on your loss. I'm sad to not be able to be here at the celebration of life for such a neat person and friend. I miss you, dear girl. You're now on Jesus' team, helping him wrangle the rest of us. See you later, not goodbye. Love, your low-maintenance friend, Janine. Last night I got a message in Spanish, no less, from Henry's family in Santa Ana, El Salvador. So I translated it. Lucky me. Anyway, here's what he said. We thank our God for all we can have. We thank our God for all we can for having granted us to have Kelly Marcon and Alan Marcon in our lives and our families. Since in life, our dear and unforgettable Kelly, grandmother Nonita for our children, Yenny Liz and Danilo Abiel. Since in our life, dear and unforgettable Kelly, grandmother Nita, for our children, Yenny Liz and Daniel Abiel. A very loved and cherished person by my husband, Henry, and his wife, Jenny Lizeth. Having the honor of having them both at our wedding as our godparents, we still remember that time when both Kelly and Alan were at the church awaiting our marriage. We feel very happy and honored to have you both in our lives. We remember when they visited us after we were married, when they got to know Yenny Liz, our daughter, who was 7 months old. It was there that Alan and Kelly spoke in English and told Roxana, the translator, that she was a very nice person and loved by them. Let it be known that they were officially the grandparents. From Yenny Liz, who called him grandfather Nonito and grandmother Nonita, Kelly was always looking out for us. We remember her as she was very intelligent, dynamic, smiling, active, and very collaborative, charitable. She helped people a lot, together with grandfather Nonito, a great marriage, an exemplary couple. She will always be remembered with much love. We know Kelly is gone, but she will live forever in our hearts and our lives. Alan, though Kelly is no longer with you, we know that she is in a beautiful place, and from there she takes care of you and is always looking out for you and her children and grandchildren. From here, you have one more family for you. God bless you and your children, the Fajardo Castro family in Santa Ana, El Salvador. I've spoken a little too long. I'd like to call Karen and Blair up to say something. Karen, Blair. I think I'll just sit back here. It's okay, Pastor, if I sit back here? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Blair Burns. I'm Kelly's oldest and most favorite cousin. Although you'll probably meet some other cousins here who will say, maybe not the oldest, but they're the favorite, because Kelly seemed to make you feel that way. Have you ever been super excited about attending an event and you feel there's no one as excited as you are? Especially something that maybe you organized. Then Kelly shows up, and she's off the Richter scale with excitement. This was the norm for Kelly for every event that I attended with her, whether it was a family reunion, a wedding, or a mission trip to El Salvador. Kelly was always smiling, and that funny laugh of hers, I can still hear it, and nobody can imitate that. She was super enthusiastic, positive, and loved get-togethers, especially with family. Kelly was a cherished family member. Of course, our relationship as cousins goes right back to our births. Jimmy, my dad, and Danny, her dad, their families, they got together fairly often when we were really young, so us cousins got to know each other pretty well from the very start. But as we grew older and got busier with school and jobs and family, we saw less and less of each other. Then we began to reconnect again with weddings and family reunions. Kelly and Al's wedding was actually the first wedding that Lorraine and I, my wife, attended as newlyweds. Then the 90s saw the start of several Burns family reunions, which Kelly and her family always attended. They were wonderful times for us to reconnect. Over 20 years ago, I had another opportunity to spend significant time with cousin Kelly, sister Karen, and friend Janine, as you heard from Al, a mission trip to El Salvador. For me, it was a 2-week trip to help our Salvadoran friends and then return home. For Kelly, that was much more than that. She connected with people every day, building relationships, eventually helping people one-on-one, like you heard Henry there from Al, with sponsorships and financial help. She was so enthusiastic to help the Salvadorans, and this continued for years. During the 2 weeks with Kelly on our mission trip, she worked physically hard. Much of our work was construction. Kelly had never mixed cement or laid bricks before, but that didn't stop her from learning or doing her best. There were many emotional times for us there also. One was at a landslide where many people died. Kelly, Karen, and I shed many tears and hugged each other regularly to console each other. There were also happy times, like when Kelly presented soccer uniforms to the whole team of young men. And also funny times where we laughed till we cried. I have a photo album that I'll bring out, and I'll have it available for anyone who wishes to see Kelly's work in El Salvador. Lots of pictures. Less than a week before Kelly's death, I'll be okay. I bought and read her book, A Crack in the Road. I read it faster than most books. As we had that link with our El Salvador mission trip, I called her to discuss her book, not realizing she would pass away in a day or two. And she didn't tell me either. We had a great conversation. We had a wonderful chat that turned out to be our last. Love you, Kelly.
For the past several weeks, I've struggled to put my thoughts to paper. I have so many amazing memories of Kelly, and I just didn't know where to begin. I guess I'll begin with saying that she was really beyond incredible. I mean, obviously you all know that, right? But Kelly was more than a cousin to me. She was a sister I never had. I really admired the quality person she was, and I definitely strived to be more like her. That was an unrealistic task, though. Kelly was all things good, plus more. She was funny, smart, well-spoken, adventurous, inclusive, and extremely low maintenance. Me, not so much. I could go on and on listing all of her amazing qualities, but there just aren't enough hours in the day to touch on all of them. And what about that laugh? I can still hear it today when I think of her. Looking back, I honestly don't have that many memories of Kelly when I was younger. Our relationship really began when Shane and I moved our family to Sudbury. Kelly, along with Alan and Josh and Krista, they welcomed our family with open arms and were very quick to introduce us to their strong band of friends, many of which would play a very significant role in our daughter Hannah's early years. Kelly was by my side during Hannah's birth. She was very grounding when things didn't go exactly as we'd hoped. Her positivity and unwavering support and love at such a critical time in our lives was invaluable. She helped me to source products to help with Hannah's unique feeding needs and was always a phone call away to lift me up when I was down. Family wasn't the only focus that Kelly had. Her heart was so big that she was beyond generous to those she didn't even know. So I knew when my brother Blair was looking for people to join a mission trip to El Salvador that Kelly would likely want to join us. I was right, and she happily accepted the invite the both of us quickly enrolling in Spanish classes in preparation for our adventure. During our trip, we cried. We laughed, and then we cried some more. Some nights, Kelly and I sat up for hours in our bunks, talking and eating through a big bag of rockets that she had brought. The trip proved to be a forever bonding experience for us, and it wasn't long before she and I were planning our second one. Our next venture would be very different from the first one, though, because these people had already stolen our hearts, and it was personal now. Instead of sifting sand, mixing cement, and laying floor tiles or bricks, we were bringing a much-needed medical group together to build a medical, dental, and educational facility. Kelly, Shane, and I rallied together a diversified group of professionals to make this trip successful, but honestly, Kelly took a leading role. It was due to her tenacity that everything was realized, including most of the fundraising. We held multiple medical clinics while we were there, and Kelly and I often worked side by side each day, keeping things organized, getting name tags on patients, taking blood pressure, and generally keeping everybody happy during the long waiting periods. She was extremely good at keeping everyone laughing. Her Spanish was much better than mine by this point because, like everything else, she continued to improve herself. She was never satisfied with mediocre. This speaks to why I admired her so much. On her breaks, she was my bathroom scout. Without going into a lot of detail, I had some serious bathroom issues. And it was sometimes a hindrance when the group was trying to get going in the morning. Often the gang would be in the van, ready to go to our location for the day, waiting for me to finish up. It became a source of bad jokes, but Kelly was always there to help me find a private place to go, no matter where we were. Be it in the middle of the rainforest, in the minister's kitchen, where only a curtain separated me from his wife who was cooking lunch, in the backyard of a stranger's home, or beside the pigs on a rural farm. That was the best one, she found me. The pigs loved us, and we laughed until our bellies ached. After Shane and I moved out west, our visits sadly became less frequent. Oh, I can't read. Our last little bit of quality time with Kelly was in Merida, Mexico. Shane and I had been there once before, but this trip would be different because we were seeing it through Kelly and Alan's eyes as locals. But this time, Kelly's struggles were beginning to be really evident to me. It was difficult to watch my vivacious sister cousin dealing with the dimming light. In my eyes, she will always be the brightest light out there. And I'm glad she was able to leave us on her own terms. I miss her terribly, and I wish I could have said goodbye. Sorry. But I'll hold on to the memories with her in them. Rest in peace, Kelly Belly.
I'd like to call Carmen and Peter up to say something. Hope everyone is comfortable. Hi, Lucky, Caroline, Favor. Nice to see you.
We are honored today to speak. We are honored to speak today as we come together to celebrate the wonderful friend that Kelly was. As a child, Kelly's family moved often, so she knew how hard it was to make friends. That's why she put such a high value on creating and cultivating friendships. She lived those values every day.
Our first encounter with Kelly was here at what was once Lord of the World Church. She approached us when she saw that we were both vulnerable and hurting. Our daughter Francoise was 6 weeks old and had just been released from a hospital. She had a severe brain malformation, and we knew her life would be short and difficult. Many casseroles, cards, and prayers had come our way. But Kelly had a gift that she wanted to give to us personally. She waited for the right moment and approached us with a Precious Moments figurine with the message, "You have touched so many hearts." That message sums up Kelly's understanding of true friendship, taking the time to make a gesture that would touch someone's heart. She didn't shy away from difficult situations and was comfortable in sitting with people without making judgments and without trying to fix the situation. Very often, conversations with friends that started out in tears and loneliness ended in laughter and connection. After that initial connection with Kelly, our friendship grew from our love of walking. As the fates would have it, we became neighbors, and our evening walks became routine. In the 19 years that we were walking partners, we walked around the equator once, and then halfway across Canada for good measure. During those walks, we talked, listened, laughed, and became close friends. Those walks were often therapy sessions for both of us. As Kelly's disease progressed and her challenges increased, she still made sure that those walks were a two-way street of talking and listening. She was the friend who remembered birthdays, the names of your parents, and brothers and sisters, even if there were a lot of brothers and sisters.
Cards are very important to her, and she always took the time to find the right one. If it didn't exist, she'd make one. Just a few samples of these cards are on the back table. People's individuality and gifts were cherished, honored, and recognized. But it wasn't all serious. Kelly had a great sense of humor and loved to have fun. She wasn't afraid of looking silly. If a costume or prop would make an event funnier, it was included. To be her friend was to participate in creating songs, plays, poems, particular to the individual and the occasion. On her 50th birthdays, Kelly now put together a Ken and Barbie musical puppet show that had us roaring with laughter. Among her other greatest hits would be The Ukrainian Guy, Janet G., and Robin Bell's 25th anniversary production. Her made-to-order songs and poems were always spot on because she listened, observed, and remembered what was the important details of her friends' lives. Kelly always brought a variety of outfits to our many excursions and trips. The toques, scarves, mitts, and winter coats she brought on group camping expeditions entertained us all. She had the perfect outfit for any situation, but for Kelly, it was not about how the outfits looked, but how they felt. She thought about how people felt in all situations. Because she knew what it was like to be the new kid, she made the extra effort to seek out the quietest person at a gathering and make sure they had someone to talk to and felt welcomed and comfortable.
In June of 2019, Kelly set out on foot to go to Giant Tiger, her favorite store. She got turned around and ended up at the corner of Madison Avenue and Old Falconbridge Road. It was the wrong place, but at the right time. She was approached by a man who had just gotten off a bus and was trying to find National Street. Lucky, that is his name, had to get to a job interview and his phone was out of battery. He needed help. He was a newly arrived Nigerian immigrant and this job interview was very important. Kelly wasn't satisfied with handing him her phone so he could use Google Maps, and she knew that Sudbury Transit wasn't the answer. She called a cab for him and waited for the ride to arrive. When it got there, the redhead, Nigerian immigrant, and Middle Eastern cab driver made their way to National Street, for the job interview. Sounds like the opening line of a bad joke, but there you go. The street was under construction. Kelly said they needed a pickup truck escort for the cab to get through. I think she was just making that up because it just added a lot to a really good story. She waited with the cab until Lucky finished his successful interview. She then invited Lucky to her home so Al could give him a ride back downtown. Kelly made sure to stay in touch with Lucky and his family. That first job set them up for success. Lucky is now working in security and first aid. His wife is a PSW, and their daughter is studying engineering at U of T. And they are here with us today to celebrate, which only goes to show the impact that Kelly had. This story sums up who Kelly was. She sensed when people were in trouble and was always ready to help. She listened to what they needed and responded in kind. She was always up for an adventure. She knew when something would make a really good story and would never let that pass her by. That was how far she was willing to go for a stranger. Imagine what she did for her friends. Kelly, you have touched so many hearts. We will never forget you, and we will always have a special place in our hearts for you. Rest in peace, my friend.
Okay, now the next person, Dan, and you have 5 minutes. Just joking, really.
It's my PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I know. If I needed to, I'd just throw it up here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan. I'm Kelly's brother. I want to begin by thanking Al for asking me to say a few words. And the funny part is, Al said, Dan, you have to keep it in under 5 minutes. And Zita was on speakerphone, and she said, Al, Dan can't say hello in less than 5 minutes. So good luck with that. And so I will say this may be a bit longer. I don't know how long we have this hall for, but we'll see. I have special permission. I was timing everyone, Blair and Karen. Just because you came up together, you get combined, okay? So thank you, Al, for that. But I just wanted to begin by thanking Al for I want to thank Al for being the best husband and partner for Kelly. Al has always been an amazing husband, but I can tell you it was 7 or 8 years ago when Kelly's disease started to present itself. It was such a difficult time for Kelly at the time. Her frustration with not getting a diagnosis and knowing something was seriously wrong. And she was having doctors doubt her, insurance companies were doubting her. I think some colleagues doubted her at work. It was an extremely frustrating time, and Al was there through all of that frustration and always giving her support and believing in her. And just imagine how frustrated this woman was. When she was diagnosed 3 years ago with cortical basal syndrome, she was ecstatic. Think about it. That's insane. She was ecstatic because she finally had a reason why she'd been feeling so terrible and all these symptoms had come up. And she felt vindicated probably for the first time in her whole life in terms of this disease, knowing that she had something when everyone kind of said, no, I don't think you have anything. But Al was there through that. But more importantly, the last 2 to 3 years, Al was a rock like we will never know. We can't understand the day-to-day mechanisms of their life for the last 2 to 3 years where Al was taking over every responsibility for the household. He was returning emails for Kelly. He was writing emails for Kelly. He was doing everything. He was even learning how to use his indoor quiet voice for Kelly. And we all know Al. He's got that beautiful voice. And we're going, how the heck? You know, if Kelly could get upset with Al's voice, which is this beautiful voice, you knew that she had a problem with her disease. But Al was there through all the minuscule and the major day-to-day activities. Kelly did, I think Rob and I talked about this. Kelly did an amazing job of not so much masking her illness, but she looked so damn good, you never realized how sick she was. Blair talked about speaking with her, not knowing how ill she was. Man, you should have been around her. Her vibrant red hair, her eyes twinkled. If you went for a walk with her, you were hard-pressed to catch up to her. She looked amazing. She had a sense of humor still. Zita and I would always talk and go, yeah, this cortical basal syndrome doesn't seem all that bad. But what it didn't tell us what was going on day in and day out in the household. Kelly said, Dan, you don't understand. From the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, my life is a struggle. It is so hard. From getting dressed in the morning. You just think about having a disease where it's so cruel, it wakes you up and you're seeing the world upside down. Literally, the vision is completely turned around. Imagine a disease that any sound, everything's cacophonous to you. And Al had to adapt his life completely and dedicated it 100% and then some to Kelly. And we know it couldn't have been easy, but Kelly told me throughout their marriage, but specifically a month before she died. She said, Al is the best damn life partner I could ever have hoped for. And I couldn't agree more, Al. Thank you so much. I'm not done. I heard a sigh of relief. That was my 5 minutes for Al. He didn't say anything about that. Yeah, sorry, Rob. Yeah, I think my 2-hour eulogy at my mom's service was ruined my reputation for brevity. But the truth is, I'm Kelly's younger brother. And I'm also known as Nana's favorite. And those of you who know me probably understand why. But actually, this was a contentious issue in our household. Because I had 2 sisters, Kelly and Colleen, and, you know, they always said, you're mom and dad's favorite, Danny. You're the youngest, you're a boy, and you've got asthma. So I had to, up my sleeve, I always had the asthma card, right? So Kelly and I would often joke about this and kind of argue. But it was kind of dumbfounding to me that they would think this, because I kind of did the numbers. I said, okay, look, Colleen, she's definitely not their favorite. Let's be honest. No disrespect to Colleen. I love her. I shouldn't have been the favorite either. I looked at me. I was my dad had a word for punks like me. We were called dissipated pups. I have no idea what the hell that means. You look up dissipated, I think it means disperse, right? So I was Blair's laughing because that was a farm term that Grandpa would use. If someone was misbehaving, you were a dissipated pup. Well, if you looked up dissipated pup in the dictionary, there was a picture of me because I was disrespectful. I was an underachiever. I wasn't smart like Kelly. I was not a good brother. I wasn't a great son. So in my mind, I could never understand why I would be the favorite child. Kelly, on the other hand, you want to check out a resume for world-class favorite child. She was smart. She was an overachiever. She excelled at school. She did exceptionally well. She won awards. She got scholarships. She was a phenomenal person. She was a great daughter. She was an amazing sister. She was a great friend. She should have been the favorite. There was no question in my mind. But this argument kind of went on for years, and it was finally settled a month before my mom died. Some of you know this story. We're at our house in Vaughan celebrating Easter, and my mom had just gotten out of the hospital after a severe operation. She was on life support, and she was at the house, and she's sitting in this big overstuffed leather chair, and she's holding court, talking to everyone, and Kelly comes up to her with her camera. You know, it's funny, when you see Kelly with a camera, I have this image of her, that she always had her camera in her hand. She took great pictures because she was so damn creative. So she had this camera in her hand, and she comes up to my mom who's sitting in the chair, and she goes, Nana, how about a great big smile for your favorite child? And my mom just started to smile, and Kelly gets ready to take the picture. And just as she was ready to take the picture, my mom turned and looked at me. And I was sitting right beside her. And if I could, so that's a bit creepy, to be honest. So picture this. Kelly not only caught the moment, she blew the picture up and framed it, and that was the picture she took, no word of a lie, of my mom smiling at her favorite child. Like, is that not the most adoring look that you have ever seen? So it was settled. Definitely, I was the favorite. But it really raised the question, why wasn't Kelly the favorite? She had a hell of a resume. I would have voted for her. Well, I think Kelly had two problems that were going against her throughout her life. And the first problem, she had the nerve to be born on my mom's birthday, July 24th. Zita joked, thank God Al held the celebration on July 23rd, because if it was on Nana's birthday, she'd be so mad. For whatever reason, my mom valued July 24th, her birthday, as her day. And the fact that Kelly had the gall to be born on her birthday, instead of being proud that your daughter's on that birthday, she had the gall to be born on my mom's birthday. My mom never forgave her. And those of you who know the story, you know I'm not BSing you, because it's God's truth. And the funny part was they kind of kissed and made up later on life on that subject. But this led to the second major problem in Kelly's life that caused some grief. As most of you know, my mom lived with Zita and I for 7 years. And you can imagine, we had 2 young kids. We just started a business. We were losing our shirt financially. So we figured we needed a little more stress. So we said, well, Nana, why don't you move in with us? So my mom moved in with us. And it wouldn't have gone too bad, but Kelly had this nasty little ability to wave in front of Nana. She would say, Nana, if ever Dan and Zita aren't good to you, or you want to come up to Sudbury, we have a room for you, and you can live with us. Wow. So anytime Nana would have a disagreement with us, she'd go, Kelly says I can go up to Sudbury anytime I want. So Zita's being a smart daughter-in-law at this point. She says, okay, keeps that in the back of her mind. Well, we're doing renovations at our house, and we're going to be putting hardwood flooring in upstairs. So Zita says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to ask Kelly and Al if they'll take Nana for a month while we're doing the renovations, because we're tearing her room apart, and really, she should go stay with them. I'm going, that's a great idea. So we call up Kelly and Al and say, hey, can Nana come stay with you? Oh, sure, we got the room ready. They were so excited. We shipped Nana up to Sudbury. 2 days later, my cell phone rings, and it's Kelly. And all she says is, I'm sorry. And I said, pardon? She says, I am so sorry. So it didn't click with me. She goes, Nana cannot live here. In fact, she can't stay the month. We'll keep her as long as you get that wood flooring in, but Al's coming down with his hammer now to help you. She said, God bless you and Zita. I don't know how you do it, but she can't stay here. So I think my mom picked up on a bit of negativity during that visit, and I think she never really forgave Kelly for that. So despite all of Kelly's credentials, despite a resume that made her child of the year as far as I was concerned, I think those two things really hurt her. But for me, Kelly held a really special role in my life. She was my older sister, but as I've told many people, she was really my older brother. So she was my older brother who taught me everything. I've told the story before. Kelly was a great ringette player. She taught me how to play hockey, which explains why I never made it big in hockey, because I was always looking for a ring on the ice, and there's this little thing called a puck that I found out about. Kelly taught me how to fight. She actually used to beat up bullies that would pick on me at school, and she'd kick the crap out of them. Her and Colleen, when they were 11 or 12 years old, they looked like 2 Russian dolls. They were thick, solid girls, probably 130 pounds each. And they would pound the crap out of me, and my dad would come in, and they'd be sitting on me, beating on me, and my dad would say, Danny, leave those girls alone. So, okay, Dad. But Kelly taught me how to fight, and that probably explains my 0 for 10 barroom brawl record and my broken nose. But more importantly, Kelly had all the time in the world for me. So think about this. I'm 4 years younger than her. We all have siblings that are younger. They're a pain in the ass. That's the way we look at it. That's what they are. Can I say ass in here? Sorry, I apologize. I said worse than the other church, but I'm going to behave myself. Anyways, siblings, young siblings are really a pain. But, I'm going to tell you that when I went into high school, I wasn't the smartest kid around. Kelly had excelled at high school. She was going into grade 13. I was going into grade 9 at Gloucester High School. And I could tell you, she spent so much time studying with her then boyfriend, Andrew Chevrier. Our dining room table was a study machine. They had their books set up, and they would study hours every day. But she always had time to tutor me, especially in the sciences. And anyone who's had an older sibling who's pretty bright go ahead of them in school, you know what? It sucks when the chemistry teacher calls your name and says, Dan Burns. She goes, you're Kelly's brother? She looks at my marks. She goes, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm sure. I was terrible at chemistry. Kelly one time quizzed me, and she said, okay, oxygen, what's the content? I said, air. That made sense to me. She got me through chemistry, got me through high school, tutored me. But the most amazing thing I remember about that period was Kelly taught me how to play saxophone. She encouraged me for grade 9 to sign up for enriched music. And do you guys remember the stages of classification? There was general, remedial general, academic, and then enriched. So she encouraged me. She goes, you're kind of musical. Why don't you sign up for enriched music? I said, well, I really don't know how to play an instrument. She goes, well, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to take my saxophone home the summer before grade 9, and I'm going to teach you how to play saxophone. I said, okay, thank you. So she actually brought her saxophone home. And just think of this. And as I was thinking of this story, it struck me as amazing that a sister who's 4 years older has her own life. I think she worked full-time in the summer because she was going into grade 13 and she was probably getting ready for her life. She taught me how to play alto sax completely. So much so that when I entered school, I became first saxophone player within a very short period of time. And she was afraid I was going to embarrass myself in this enriched program. And she spent the whole month of August teaching me how to play saxophone. And I'm going, that's amazing stuff for a sister to do. And it's funny that you don't think of this for years. And then all of a sudden you go, my God, I'm not even sure I do that for my kids. I did do it, Jake. So, and I could talk. Kelly was just a person that did everything for me. You probably heard this story, but it's one of my most heartfelt memories of Kelly. And last one. I deserve that, Al. I get Nana to give you the stink eye here. Hold on. Nana's favorite child can speak as long as... I was 11, I think, or 12 years old in Ottawa, and I was very proud to get the paper route for the Ottawa Citizen in Blackburn Hamlet. And I was so excited because I was one of the youngest paper boys in Blackburn Hamlet. It was quite a cool thing. And so I was so excited. I had 2 paper bags over my shoulder. I had this wagon. I'd be walking down the street delivering the papers. That was in the summer. Of course, when the rain and the winter came, for some reason my asthma would start to act up. And I'd say to my dad, I don't think I can deliver the papers. And he'd turn to Kelly and say, I want you to help your brother out and deliver the papers. She never complained. She never argued. I just think of my boys. They argue over who's taking the garbage out. She had like 120 newspapers to deliver. Never said boo, went out and delivered the papers. And she tells the story of going to Mrs. Donnelly's house on Burnview Avenue. The fact that I can remember this drives me nuts because I don't remember a lot of things. But she went to Mrs. Donnelly's house, and she's this lovely Irish lady. And at the time, you delivered the paper. Once a week, you had to collect the money for the paper as well. So Kelly was giving her the paper. She goes, oh, that's $5, Mrs. Donnelly. So Mrs. Donnelly reaches into her purse and gives her $10 and says, that's $5 for the paper, and that's $5 for that lovely paper boy who delivers my paper. And Kelly goes, I am that paper boy. And she was that paper boy. She treated me so well, and she was an amazing sister. She kind of blew it one time, and it was when Zita and I first started dating. And Kelly and Al were living in Sudbury, and I said, Zita, I got to bring you to meet my sister and her husband and their kids. We're getting pretty serious. It's important. Kelly was my first best friend. I wanted her to meet Zita. So we go, ring the doorbell. We're standing outside the door. And Kelly answers the door, and she looks at Zita. She looks her in the face, and then she looks down at her legs. She turns to me and says, she doesn't have fat thighs. And I said, and I'm like dumbfounded by this. I said, hold on a sec. I didn't say that, kind of. So I said, thanks, Kel. I know you're my wingman. You're always looking out for me. But my relationship with Kelly was very gifted, and I was very fortunate because she was my first best friend. And as I got older, Kelly would introduce me to her friends. And her friends would come up and give me a hug and say, Danny, is it ever nice to meet you? And I would kind of be looking, I'm going, oh yeah? I guess it pays to advertise and have a good agent, because I'm not sure Kelly told them all the stories. So in my mind, I'm thinking, did Kelly tell them about the time I wrecked her Honda Civic? All she said was, are you okay? She never reminded me about it again until I started to make some money. And she said, wouldn't it be nice to buy your sister a convertible sports car? I said, banish that thought. I lost her scuba suit when I had a party, and she was going scuba diving. And one of my friends had decided to wear her complete scuba outfit around the house during the party, thinking it was funny. And what wasn't funny is I was hungover laying on my bed, and Kelly came up and slapped me in the head and said, where the hell's my scuba outfit? And I went, And I had this picture of Sue King. She had the mask, the snorkel, the flippers, and everything. She's walking around our basement. I said, check the dryer. She found it in the dryer, forgave me for that. She forgave me for being probably the most unappreciative worst brother. And that's one of the features that I loved most about Kelly, is that she gave me a fair shot all the time, and she gave me way too much respect that I didn't deserve. Lastly, Kelly, besides being an older brother to me, older sister, and my first best friend, she was Auntie Kelly to my boys. And you heard the stories about her loving candy. Our boys would hide their Halloween and Easter stash when they heard Aunt Kelly was in town. They headed for the hills. They knew trouble was coming. But her love for frogs transcended everything. She would find a frog in a puddle walking down the road. She loved frogs, and she took our boys frog hunting all the time. And she wasn't Aunt Kelly. She had to be Auntie Kelly. In closing, it was Kelly's friends who taught me the neatest lessons about Kelly. And it was when we came up for the interment of Kelly's ashes. And we went over to Peter and Carmen's house. We were kindly invited over with some friends visiting there. And we were telling stories, and everyone's telling anecdotes about Kelly, kind of like today, and the kindness and the gestures. And two things really struck me from those conversations that resonated with my lifetime experience with her from being a kid, is Kelly was a master at paying attention to people. It's a gift. She paid attention to people, especially on the periphery. The people that were in the circle, in the know, she didn't care so much about them. She was looking for the person sitting on the outside who was maybe afraid to engage, who didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the confidence. And she would always go out there and meet with them and engage them, and they would immediately feel included. I heard Karen mention the word inclusiveness. You know, what a great quality to have. And that inclusiveness to me is just a gift that Kelly had through her whole life. And the other thing that struck me from talking to her friends is Kelly wasn't an egotistical person who wanted to make grand gestures. Her life was not interested in being the big shot, trying to drop money on something to be the big shot, or pretending she was something she wasn't. Kelly's life was really a series of thousands of meaningful small gestures. Small, meaningful gestures that impacted most people in this room. And I'm sure afterwards, when we're having coffee and discussing this more, everyone's going to have a story about one of those meaningful gestures. To me, Kelly was the best sister I could ever hope for. She was the best friend when I grew up. I'm going to miss her so much. But I can tell you that being in a room with her friends, family, seeing cousins I haven't seen in a while, you know what? Kelly's smiling right now, thinking that we're all celebrating and having a good laugh, a bit at her expense, but more importantly, we're looking through her eyes, having a good laugh. Thank you very much.
Well, Dan landed the plane. So we're going to have another song, another of Kelly's favorite songs, called the Camp Song. We won't be much longer. Not because you, Dan. Okay, here we go. Krista come up now and do the eulogy. Switch to the main picture. Pastor Mitchell, please.
I feel like it's hard to go after everybody, but I'm going to move some other things. But I am prepared, Uncle Dan, like my mom. Good. So thank you all here for joining us. We are very grateful to have everybody here who's in person, but also those, I think, joining us virtually. For those of you who knew my mom well, you would know that she would have actually liked to have a hand in writing this. But unfortunately, that just wasn't in the cards. As you've heard today, it's quite hard to find the appropriate words to do the memory of my mom justice, because she was not only an amazing person, but she was actually the writer, the toastmaster, and the eulogizer of our family. She gave the eulogy at my nono's funeral, and I'm pretty sure all of Coniston asked her to do their eulogies after that. So she was physically small, but her shoes are big to fill. I do think I'm up to the task, though, because I happened to win a speech competition in this room in grade 4. Okay, my mom may have wrote the speech, right? But delivery's everything, so we're gonna go. Knowing my mom, she would want me to say all the nice things, and unfortunately, going a little bit later, you've heard a lot of these nice things, but she would also want it to be light and humorous. So I'm gonna try my best to live up to expectations. As you've seen already, I come from a long line of criers, so you'll have to bear with me. But we also have a saying in the Burns family that you should never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So here we go. So my mom was an amazing woman, and I'm lucky to have had 36 years almost with the best mom and friend I could ever ask for. It was very challenging to think about all the good things to write about her, because we could be here literally the whole day. Because we know how she lived her life with adventure, creativity, kindness, and courage. I'll try to touch on all the things that I think made my mom a wonderful person, but of course you've heard some of the other things today. So as a young child, I was in awe of the very cool and adventurous mom I had. I heard stories of her scuba diving without ropes, nearly getting frozen beneath the ice one New Year's Eve. She also told us the tale of her skydiving and breaking her fingers on her landing. And then there was the big adventure she took solo to watch the hospital bed races on the Rideau Canal, where she ended up at a bean dinner and met my dad. And we all know the story, so we're not going to go into those details. Throughout my childhood, my mom never shied away from sharing her adventures with me as well. She took me and my friends skiing to Mattawa or Searchmont, often getting mistaken for a teenager while chatting up our seatmates on the chairlifts. She was the fun mom who'd go tube sledding, tobogganing, fitting in with me and my friends that were less than half her age. I often think some of my friends really liked hanging out with her more than they did with me. My mom, she traveled to every continent pretty much with my dad and their friends, but I was lucky enough to get some adventures with her as well. And sorry, Dad, you were rarely ever included on those. Yeah, you always had to work. We often flew by the seat of our pants on our adventures. During our Habitat for Humanity build in Hungary, we took a side trip to Vienna without much planning and somehow just happened on all the tourist destinations. On a blood banking conference trip that I got to go with my mom to Boston, we got last-minute Red Sox tickets right down the first baseline and got to see a playoff game. My favorite memory, though, of my mom and her adventurous side and how spontaneous she was during the Vancouver 2010 Olympic Games. So it was the day of the opening ceremonies, and there were all of these watch parties going around Vancouver where I lived. I had a last class. They luckily gave us 2 weeks off for a break, but my mom called me right before I went in. She said, "Are you downtown? Like, I'm watching this. It's so exciting." And I told her, like, "Mom, I'm going to class. Like, I'll talk to you later. I'm heading down there after." Now, this was 2010, and it doesn't seem that far away, but for context, we didn't have smartphones in those days, right? 2010. So when I emerged from class, my mom had left me 5 or 6 voicemails. Obviously she knew I was in class, so that quite surprised me. Listening to these voicemails in succession was absolutely hilarious. So number 1, I was like, "Hi, sweetie, I'm so excited. I wonder if maybe you could come, I could come out for a couple days, and maybe I can switch around some shifts, but I won't do anything until I hear from you. Call me back." Number 2, "Hi, sweetie, okay, switched around my shifts, and now I have a lot of time off. But I won't book anything until I hear from you. Call me back. Hi, sweetie, I booked flights. I'm coming. Hope it's okay. I'm going to stay with you. We can go to some of the watch parties. Let me know. Call me back. Hi, sweetie. I'm looking at some scalper tickets online. I think I can get some. Let me know. Maybe if you want to go to the games, call me back. Last one. Hi, sweetie. I bought some scalper tickets. Some they're going to deliver to your house, and others you have to go meet a guy on this corner, but he has your number. Hope this is okay. Call me back. So needless to say, with my mom, we had the most amazing memories of the 2010 Vancouver Olympic Games. We decked out in the swag she brought with her, watching curling and hockey games courtesy of these scalper tickets. One of my best memories, though, is we were finishing a curling match, and it ended early, and we're like, well, there's a hockey game on. So we ran through the streets of downtown to try to find an actual live scalper to get us tickets to this Canadian women's hockey game. And we managed to get them, and we were really excited because one of my high school classmates was on the team. So alongside her sense of adventure, she was always the type of person who really wanted to learn more, and she was never really shy about putting in the work to learn, particularly with her creative endeavors. Now, you've heard today that she's had an amazing creative side, taking inspiration from everyday life. She used to paint watercolors of our camping trips and outdoor adventures. And she wrote poems and stories inspired by her travels, and even penned the novel A Crack in the Road about her mission work in El Salvador. Now, I might be biased. For those of you who haven't read it, it is the best novel I've ever read. While some of her writings were a lot more serious, she's best known by her friends and coworkers for her comedic work. She was infamous for her spoof songwriting. Now, I think this may have spawned from her penning an original song and tune when Josh was born called It's a Miracle, which she thought was original. And my dad quickly pointed out that it was sung to the tune of It's Impossible. It's a miracle the way you came into our lives. But she persisted. She was often known to write skits in these funny tunes with very catchy but very unrelated tunes. But sometimes, these were a bit too catchy. Years later, we're still singing, Janet G., a Roman Catholic school trustee. A selection of these writings you can find in the Kelly Marcon collection at the back of the church. Throughout my life, you've heard this from numerous people. My mom always knew how to make people feel welcome. Some cousins have told me that she would always make time for one-on-one chats with them, even during big group gatherings, making them feel special that they had one-on-one time with her. I've heard more than one story about my mom, everybody being in awe of how my mom would always seek out the person in the room who didn't feel like they belonged or was new and include them. And I do often wonder if this came from the fact that they moved around a lot during her childhood, so she understood how hard it was to be that new person. Whatever it was, she definitely had a positive influence on the lives of many people who she knew well, and even those who she didn't know. She went out of her way to show people kindness. Her acts of kindness were constant, numerous, and defining of who she was. She did so many things in her daily life that were so kind and generous without even batting an eye. Whether it was identifying and mentoring a childhood classmate of mine who was struggling with school and many aspects of life, rushing home to make sandwiches and retrieve warm clothes for a man in need she drove by on the way home from Starbucks, bringing chocolates to a stranger who helped her up the week before when she lost her balance, or seeing a lost man struggling to find his way to a job interview, calling a cab and taking him all the way there, making sure he got there. I think he was sure lucky that he met my mom that day. She always stepped up and did what needed to be done, and somehow did it all with a certain calmness while under pressure, particularly in times of medical injuries. At Camp Manitou, she often acted as the camp doctor, including the year that multiple people happened to break their bones. And one infamous summer that the Burns family rented a cottage, she was the healer and chauffeur, bringing members of her family, some more than once, to the same small rural hospital when we had sustained 4 or maybe 5 fishhook injuries. The final emergency visit, she brought the Timbits to the staff as a preemptive thank you. While she practiced kindness in her everyday life, my mom was also looking for opportunities to get involved in larger efforts. Whether it was helping to organize food baskets at this church, where her competitive side came out trying to get all of her stuff first in her baskets, or helping to build houses with Habitat for Humanity in Sudbury and Hungary, even sacrificing the diamond in her ring during the Sudbury build. But I particularly remember about how she was inspired hearing about her cousin Blair's upcoming trip to build houses in El Salvador. She jumped at the opportunity to join him. And once down there, as we've heard, it wasn't surprising that she made a connection with one of the local teenagers, Henry, who reminded her a bit of Josh. She continued this connection, as we've heard, long after his trip, supporting him so he could go to school, which something that wasn't feasible for his family to do otherwise. She was even invited as the special guest to attend his wedding. Through making this simple connection, she made a difference in his life and the life of his kids, who, as you've heard, call her Abuela Nonita, which is grandmother little Nona, to show how special she was. For her own grandchildren, Oscar and Sully, my mom definitely wanted to be the cool, fun grandma. She did not want to have that traditional, boring grandmother name, and once insisted on simply being called Kelly, which we quickly vetoed. She loved being silly with them, and that's how she got her name Nanners. I honestly don't remember what silly thing she was doing at the time, but we said, "Oh, Nanners, you're bananas," and it stuck. In the short time that she spent with them, Nanners wanted to impart as much wisdom as she could. I remember the early days in New York City. She was so proud that she showed these barely 2-month-old boys that if they kicked their legs just right, that they could make the little bee on their Playmobil move. Honestly, like a 2-month-old. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself, but she did that. When I asked Oscar and Sully what they remembered most about their Nanners, they told me how excited she would get when there was dessert. She would do this. Now, most of you know that my mom had a wicked sweet tooth. She loved all types of candy, particularly Rockets, Jelly Bellies, Mike and Ike's, except the strawberry ones. Many of us do have a specific food-related memory of my mom. Some of my cousins remember her bringing a large person to the movie theater to stuff with pop and candy. Other relatives remember them coming over to their house and raiding their Halloween candy stash or salt and vinegar chips. Now, while my mom was a very kind and generous person, there's one thing she wasn't kind about sharing. It was her candy. Now, she had this rule that she imparted on me, and I will live by it for the rest of my life, that you only share your candy with people who enjoy it as much as you do, because otherwise it's a waste. So this would mean I'd get to share her candy, and people like Richard, they'd get to share candy. But Dad, if he asked, she would say, "But will you love it?" Because she really didn't want to waste it on anybody who wouldn't love it. Right before my mom's passing, her friend Peter made these wonderful lemon cookies. And one of the symptoms of my mom's condition, she couldn't taste, which was quite tough when you're a person who loves food. So she was surprised that she could actually taste the lemon in these cookies. That meant, though, that no one was sharing these cookies with her. She rationed them to make sure she'd always have more. And good thing Peter made her more. And after the service, there's wonderful lemon cookies that you'll be able to try. The last thing I want to say about my mom is that she was definitely a very brave and strong woman. And I'll be very lucky if I inherited a fraction of her strength. She was committed to helping others throughout her life and even on her death, as she wanted both her life and her death to be meaningful. She definitely succeeded in doing both. Now, this part's going to be hard. I know that all of you know now that my mom was an organ donor. While many of us sign the card or sign, it's a default process for some provinces here, my mom's situation, it was a bit different. So she advocated for herself fiercely to be able to donate her organs as she passed. She knew how much it meant, as her friend Gloria was actually the recipient of a double lung and heart transplant. Her journey wasn't easy, though. It meant that she had to go for multiple blood tests, x-rays, ultrasounds, and even the dreaded COVID tests, but she did this all while smiling. After her last COVID test, she belted out one of her favorite John Prine songs for the organ donation coordinator in her slightly out-of-tune voice. Sorry, it's inappropriate. "Please don't bury me down in the cold, cold ground. I'd rather have them cut me up, pass me all around." I'm not sure they'll let us back into the hospital after that. With her organ donation, my mom was able to save the lives of 4 people who received her lung, kidneys, and liver. I know how happy she would be to support these people living longer and healthier lives. We were grateful to receive a letter of thanks from the recipient of her lungs, which I will read a bit of an excerpt from the letter. I was ready for an active retirement of travel, enjoying the outdoors, and spending time with grandchildren. Unfortunately, in the fall of 2017, I was diagnosed with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a terminal lung disease. A major flare-up in the spring of 2021 left me on continuous oxygen with difficulty breathing. I was deemed suitable for a transplant and placed on the transplant list in June. After 2 false alarms, I was lucky enough to receive my double transplant for the lungs this October, thanks to the generosity of my donor. And now my life is just beginning. I can't thank you enough for this wonderful gift. I will celebrate the 19th of October as my second birthday and celebrate my donor and the second chance at life that has been given to me. Rest assured that I will take great care of these lungs, pick up my retirement plans, and lead a full and rewarding life. Because of my mom's generous gift, grandchildren will get to spend time playing with their grandparent, and families will spend time with their loved one. My mom's legacy of kindness and generosity lives on, just like she would have always wanted. Thank you.
Let's find my paper.
I know, sorry.
It's okay, it's right here. Well, Kelly had a term for when people spoke and said the same thing over and over again, and that's called chewing your cabbage. So I think we did a little bit of that today. So a little bit of chewing our cabbage. So we just have a couple, well, 1 or 2 more things. So Josh, if you want to come up and say a few words, if you have a few words in you, and read one of Kelly's poems.
I didn't prepare anything. As Krista said, Mom wrote my speech as well. I did happen to win the grade 6 speech that year about being left-handed. And I figured everybody here would say similar things. Mom was very wonderful. But, do want to say, Dan, thank you for making my mom never let me hear the words, boys will be boys, and get away with it. I do think that, as everybody knows, who has anybody who spent enough time with my mom, that she was always encouraging. She would encourage you to be the best person that you can be, take risks, take chances, but she would also challenge you. If you're making a mistake, or if you're doing something that she didn't see was right, she would make you question whether or not you're in the right space. And that was one of the greatest things that she could do for me and for everybody in this room, is that when you needed a boost, she gave you that boost. But when you needed a kick, she gave you a little kick. Never too hard. I want to say thank you to my dad for taking care of Mom. Thank you to all her friends. You truly made her life great. You're all second aunts, uncles. We're very lucky. Mom would be very proud of the accomplishments of Krista, and she'd be very proud of all the accomplishments that the boys would have in the future. I know that she'll live on in all of our lives for the rest of our lives. And because of her, a lot of people will be better because of the influence she had on us. Don't ever look at someone and think they're less. Don't ever look at someone and think that you're better, because they might just be in a different situation. They might just be in a different place. And Mom was always the person who could see that, and she would encourage them the hardest. And whether or not you understood in the moment why she encouraged those people, she saw why she should encourage those people. And so if you can, in your life, find people who need encouragement and encourage them. It doesn't always work, but doesn't mean that it's not worth trying. And Mom always tried, and she always gave as much as she could to everybody. And that's how she would want everybody to live their life. is don't look at someone for who they are. Look at someone for what they can do. And it's a funny story as a kid, you know, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, prior to the LGBTQ movement, Mom was very ahead of the time. And even before I was, you know, even hit puberty, Mom would always say, it's okay if you're gay. And whether or not I am, it doesn't matter, but she knew that I needed to hear that for some reason. I don't know if she saw me doing something, but it didn't matter because she knew that it was riskier for me not to know that she would love me no matter what than it was if she didn't tell me that. And whether or not I was gay, it didn't matter, but she wanted to know that unconditionally in that moment, that was something that she wanted me to know, because if I didn't know, she didn't want me to think that she wouldn't be there for me. But I wasn't going to get away with murder. If I was Krista, I might, but if I... Yeah, it's okay. I was a favorite grandchild. So I'll read Mom's poem, and then that'll be it for me. It's called When the Sun Finally Rises. When the sun finally rises after a long winter's rain, when the chickadees and blue jays can sing again, when the butterfly basks on colorful flowers, when thoughts of love fill all the hours, when the grass is greener on my side of the fence, when the lines in my brow are no longer tense, when the stories I tell are loving and kind, when I welcome all thoughts that enter my mind, when the tears that I cry stream down on my face, when I know they're a gift, a moment of grace, when I'm mindful and present in all that I do, I'll remember to thank each one of you. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more song, and then we can have a bit of fellowship and then try those lemon cream cookies that everybody's talking about. First of all, I'd just like to thank Richard and Debbie and Rob and Val and Carmen for doing the music today. This song that they're going to sing is called The Prayer of St. Francis. It was Kelly's favorite church song. So enjoy, and then we can have some coffee and some dessert and some fruit. Thank you very much for being here.
And as Kelly used to say, we'll pick up the pace.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury or
Thank you. Just please join us in fellowship now, and there's coffee and there's desserts and there's fruits. Help yourselves. Thank you for all for coming. We appreciate it.